Okay, so the point here it says where are they going to watch it? You mentioned all these streaming platforms. How am I going to get my movie on Netflix, onto Amazon Prime, or any of these others, Tubi? How am I going to get it on there?
That is the big question.
Yeah.
That okay, and that is the question that most filmmakers struggle with. That's the major question. All right. So
I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, like, where do you even start? Who do you contact?
that is the biggest challenge in the film industry for indie filmmakers. All right. So everybody assumes when they're making their movie, oh yeah, no problem. I'll just phone up Netflix and get it on there. No, does not work that way. All right. So let's take a few minutes and talk about so that is sort of the classic distribution discussion. So let's just look at that. All right. And it's the most one of the most important questions. So distribution is basically, as I explained before, is licensing your movie to an audience so that they can consume it, right? And it starts with the distribution process. Basically, starts with so you've got your content, right, and then you determine who you want to get it to and where you want to get it, and now you're asking how do you get it there. So basically, there's two main streams to go down how you get it there. One is what I call classic distribution or third-party distribution, which would be to use what we call a distributor. In your business, it would be a broker or an agent.
Okay.
All right. You want to go rent an apartment, you should probably or you want to buy a house, find an agent who will find you that house that you can buy and then help you do the deal.
Mm-hmm.
In our business, that's called a distributor. So basically, those are people who deal with the streaming platforms and the television stations. They do that for a living. They represent your product and get you into those platforms. That's a distributor.
Okay.
And just like in your business, you hire them and you pay them. They're going to earn a fee. They're going to earn a percentage generally of what the sale is, kind of like you will as a real estate agent. Or, and I don't know how much this goes on in real estate, you can do it yourself. You want to buy a house, you could go knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey, I'd like to buy your house, and just transact it directly and not have to use an agent. So in our business, that's called self-distribution, where you basically say, I don't need a distributor. I'm going to do it myself. It's not easy. You got to know what you're doing. You have to have the skills. You have to have the desire. It's a very daunting task to do it yourself. But if you know what you're doing, then there might be two reasons why you would do that yourself. The number one reason, well, why would somebody do that in real estate? What would be the number one reason?
If they have their license?
No, they don't have a license. They're just some guy wants to maybe, let's not say buy a house. Let's talk about sell it. Why would you sell your own house and not use an agent?
Save money.
That's it. It's just about money. You're going to pay a huge fee to an agent. Now, hopefully you're going to get good value because they're going to get you a good price and do a good transaction, everything like that. But you say, hey, I don't need this agent. The market's hot as heck. People are knocking on my door. What do I need to pay an agency, commission for? And so that's why you would do it yourself in our business as well. The number one reason is to save money. The number two reason is to kind of control your destiny a little bit more, because when you're using a distributor, you're removed from the process. So you don't know what's going on. It's kind of like, if you were an agent representing somebody and you're dealing with potential buyers, the owner, the seller wouldn't necessarily know who all the buyers were. You'd only bring them like the offers.
Exactly.
But they maybe want to know who the buyers are. They maybe want to be involved in that whole discussion and that process. So in our business,
to make sure they're getting the most.
Yeah, or just seeing who's interested and make sure that there's no funny business going on and, or no friends or,
Or maybe they just want to be involved.
Yeah, sometimes they just want to be involved because they like to control that process.
First time they're selling their house, first time making a movie.
And they had no clue what's involved, so they maybe want to learn or be part of it. All right, until they actually do it and they realize how much actually goes into it, that there's a lot more than you think. So that would be the main reason is the money, though. You want to save the money.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a big commission that you're paying. And in the film business, like in real estate, 5%, 6%, something like that, to do the house sale, right? In the film business, it's 30 to 35%. Like you're talking a 30% commission to sell your movie. That is substantial. That's a third of the entire revenue stream. That is standard distribution fees. So all of a sudden you say, I'm going to hire a distributor and they're going to say, hopefully license my movie to Netflix, right? For, let's call it just $100,000 to keep the numbers round. You're going to pay them a 30% distribution fee. So that $100,000 that Netflix pays for your movie, they're taking $30,000 for doing that sale. That's a pretty big commission.
Who's the distributor?
Well, now let's talk about finding a distributor. Okay, so we're going to look at two things. One is going through these distributors, these third-party broker distributors, and second thing, going it yourself. So let's get back to.
But you mentioned there that Netflix is going to take 30%.
No. The distributor is the sales agent. They're taking 30%.
Okay.
Yeah, Netflix is the buyer.
Right.
Okay, they're licensing your movie. They're paying you $100,000 as a license fee, but it's going through a distributor to make that happen, and they take 30% of it.
Okay.
Give or take. Sometimes you negotiate 25, 20, sometimes 35, 40, give or take.
Why is it that much? Because
that's the going rate.
Don't do that well.
That is the going rate in the film industry, and it's a fair bit of work to do it. You know, these distributors have relationships that they built over years and years and years, and you know, they have to put some time and effort into it, and that's what they charge. So how do you find these distributors?
Well, it's connections at the end of the day, you know.
At the end of the day, it's definitely connections, and connections come with people who have good content. You know, people who are easy to deal with, professional, but also are bringing you stuff that is worthwhile to buy. Like after a while, if you're a Netflix buyer and your distributor is bringing you garbage all the time, that you're just wasting your time even having that discussion. So if they're bringing you good quality content that you're interested in, and they're making your life easy to deal with, then you'll deal with them. So let's talk about Netflix. Everybody's interested in Netflix because it's the big company and, you know, sort of the holy grail.
It's the powerhouse.
It's the powerhouse. So let's deal with that. Okay. But we could talk about any of the platforms, and, you know, we could go on for hours and hours and hours, but let's focus on Netflix because everybody likes to talk about that one. Right. So right now, Netflix, I mean, when Netflix first started, they met directly with independent producers, like with people like me, people who made their movies because they needed a lot of content. Remember, they weren't making content. They were just a licensing company, a streaming company, and they needed tons and tons of programming and content. So they would meet with everybody. They had lots of what we call buyers or acquisition people who acquired the product for their platform. And they would have these meetings and you'd pitch them and you'd say, hey, I got this great movie. You should have it on your service. And if they like it, you'd negotiate a price. But then they became such a big streaming platform with so many, you know, like such a vast audience. Everybody who made anything would knock on their door. So, you know, it used to be they'd speak to 1,000 producers a year. Then they started speaking to 10,000, then probably 100,000. And it got out of hand. It was just too much. They just didn't have enough time. People were selling one movie at a time. They didn't want to do that. They had to limit their time and become more efficient. So they said, you know, from now on, if we can only talk to people who are selling us at least, you know, 100 movies at a time, we need to speak to people who have a lot of programming or big programming. Sorry, guys, but we just don't have enough time to speak to all you little guys who make one-off.
Same thing with everyone that gets big in business. They got to value their time.
Correct. So the way Netflix valued their time was they said, we're going to limit our meetings and our discussions of product acquisitions to a handful of distributors. So if you're an indie film producer and you want to pitch to us, you have to give it to this distributor, and the distributor will consolidate all these pitches and pitch to us, you know, once a month and everything. Because that we don't have enough time to hear all your individual stuff, so we'll hear from them. So you need to give it to them and they'll pitch it to us.
Is that someone that they have in-house?
No. And it's not someone, it's, you know, probably 3 or 4 dozen companies. They probably deal with 30 to 40 distributors. I don't know exactly. They don't publish it, but it's not tens of thousands of independent filmmakers. It's, a handful, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 distributors. So they
that
can
they work with often.
correct.
They know them.
Correct. And then now, if you want to sell to Netflix now, they say to you, you got to go through one of our distributors, or sometimes they call them a sales agent, or it could be a lawyer or whoever has that relationship with Netflix. It's usually a distributor. Which is a company that represents lots and lots of product, and you put it through them and they pitch it. And it's the only way to get to Netflix now,
Okay.
unless you know somebody. And even then, it's the only way. So if you want to do a Netflix pitch, you have to go through a distributor. And that's pretty well the case with pretty well every of the SVOD streaming platforms. Now it's also become the case with most of the AVOD platforms, where they used to be, they'll take everything because they're putting it up and they're streaming it for free. What do they care? People watch it, get TV commercials, great. Like, what do they care? But now the platforms are so crowded and there's only so much bandwidth, and they just don't want every piece of garbage that's made out there. So they are starting to what we call curate, choose also. Even the TVOD platform. So Amazon being the biggest now, where you can transact. It used to be you could load, you still can. You can actually, an independent film producer can actually go on to Amazon. It's called Amazon Prime Video Direct, not Amazon Prime Video, not their streaming, not their subscription service. It's the transactional. They have a transactional side and a subscription side. On the transactional side, a filmmaker can go on and actually load up their film. And then it takes several weeks and it gets approved to make sure community standards is not violent, not crazy, ridiculously racist, or whatever the case may be. They have their standards. They have to review it to make sure. And then it goes on and goes active. It's a process to do that. So sometimes people want help with that through a distributor. We're going to talk about an aggregator in a second. But the other thing is Amazon also got so inundated with product that, especially with documentaries, everybody now makes their own documentaries. And a documentary could be, hold up your cell phone and look at it and talk into it and says, hey, I'm Jeff Deverett. I am a filmmaker and here's my life, and spend 5 minutes. And that's a documentary, right? So Amazon was getting hundreds of thousands of those. And they're not real movies. So Amazon said, enough's enough. We're done with documentaries. You can't load up documentaries anymore unless it comes through a distributor and it's a feature documentary and it's a legitimate film. Because everybody was putting these up and just, I guess, taking up bandwidth and crashing the service, and it wasn't even legitimate. Nobody's ever going to buy this stuff. All right. So Amazon said, we're not letting people do documentaries anymore. We're limiting it to no short films, this, that. Fair is fair. They're running this service and they want somewhat decent quality. Now, they don't want to, act as God and decide which product is good and which isn't, because, they want the audience to decide. But it's got to at least be a decent movie. I'm looking over here because we got the window washer doing this.
Perfect.
That's
timing.
okay. Not a problem. Good, honest living. He's doing his job.
It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So, when you choose, we call it curated. When a service is choosing what goes on, then the term we use is they're curating it, meaning they're choosing what to put on and picking, and now the big streaming, like the big subscription services like Netflix and Disney Plus and HBO Max, that's 100% curated. You want to get on there, somebody needs to pitch them and say, this is really good, you should put it on. And they do that. You can't load it yourself. You can't just put it up. Okay. So it's these distributors that serve that role. They're the people, these third party, call them sales agents. Middlemen, brokers, okay, who do that. There's another term that we use in our industry called sales agents. Distributors and sales agents are sort of merged to become the same thing. But when a sales agent the term first got launched in the film industry, sales agent, it would be somebody who a producer, a content creator, like a filmmaker, would use to find a distributor. So a sales agent would generally find you a distributor,
okay,
and a distributor would put you on a platform. Now they're sort of one and the same. A lot of distributors call themselves sales agents. A lot of agents do distribution. So you can do a two-step process where you use an agent to get you a distributor, or you can go directly to the distributor, or sometimes an agent can go directly to a platform. But it's basically a middleman. Sometimes there's two stages. Sometimes there's a third. Let's talk about what the third is. All right. Because the platforms, all of them, SVOD, TVOD, AVOD, all of them they're very technical. Remember, these are what we called over-the-top streaming platforms, which are internet digital delivery platforms, right? They have to receive their product a certain way. The movies have to be delivered to them a certain way, which we call the specifications, the specs. So you have to deliver the certain speed at which the film plays, the certain frame rate, a certain quality of sound. The sound has to be within this range. It can't be too loud, too quiet. There's many specifications, and each of the platforms, when you're doing business with them, give you what they call a delivery schedule, which outlines all the specifications that you have to follow in order to deliver your film to them properly so that they can air it on their platform. So you have to follow that, right? Now, a lot of filmmakers they're technical, but they're not that technical. And they have to go through these different quality control checks and all this kind of stuff. So it got a little crazy delivering your product to these streamers because you could never comply totally with all their specifications. So the streamers, or maybe not them, but somebody came up with this idea and said, hey, what if we were to create another sort of middleman area where we could help indie producers deliver their product with the exact specs, and we'll just be a technical company. And that's called an aggregator. So, and these are aggregators are basically technology companies that help content producers, filmmakers, deliver their product with the right technical specifications to the platforms. So, and then that was a good service, and they just charge a flat fee for that. But then, so basically,
it's like the technicalities of the film.
Yeah, it's a technicality. So, years ago, I delivered a film to Netflix. I needed to use one of their approved aggregators who would help me deliver the film properly to Netflix so they could air it on their service the way they wanted to air it, in the right specifications.
Okay.
And it's not that hard. They charge you, a flat fee. Maybe they charge you $1,500 to do that service. All right. After a while, the aggregators started becoming very important because all the platforms said, you need to use an aggregator. We don't want to take delivery directly from you. You need to put it through these people. These are the people we trust. And there became fewer and fewer, a handful of them, the trusted companies that would deliver properly and take a lot of aggravation of the process for everybody, for the platform, for the film maker. Everybody would be less aggravated as a result of it. So then the aggregators started having these relationships, and they said, hey, maybe we should get in the business of selling it. See, the distributor still did the selling, and then a distributor would use an aggregator sometimes. If a lot of the distributors can do the specs themselves, but the smaller ones who don't have, say, the technical departments, whatever, would use an aggregator and on behalf of the filmmaker to deliver. So now the aggregators have gotten into the business where they can pitch to the platforms directly for you if you want. And some of them take a commission, some of them just do it as a flat fee. So now it's a little more diluted where a distributor and an aggregator and an agent, they're all sort of ways to get into the platforms.
Okay.
Sometimes you're using all three, sometimes you're using one, sometimes two. It depends on who you're dealing with, what services they offer, and what the deal is. So that's how it works. Now, the next question you're going to ask me, if you don't ask me this, is how do you choose the right distributor? Like, first of all, how do you find these distributors? And then once you find them, because there's hundreds of them, actually probably thousands, how do you know which one to use?